And today we're celebrating our 200th episode of the Good Leadership Podcast. And in the last 100 episodes, we've uncovered the strategies that fuel high achievers, the mindset shifts that spark transformation, and the leadership playbooks that separate the good from the truly great. But here's the thing, knowledge without action is just trivia. So today we're going to do something different. We're taking the most powerful insights, the most transformative lessons, and distilling them into your ultimate leadership blueprint, which is going to be practical, battle-tested strategies that you can use right now to level up. So if you're ready to stop consuming leadership advice and start applying it to get real results, well, then this episode is for you. Let's get started. Welcome to the Good Leadership Podcast, where we explore the stories, strategies, and insights of thought leaders who inspire us to think differently and lead better. Through candid conversations and expert perspectives, we dive into the challenges, breakthroughs, and practical lessons that shape exceptional leadership. What does it really take to succeed? Is it talent? Is it hard work? Is it luck? While those factors play a role, the truth is success is an inner game before it ever becomes an external reality. The most successful people aren't competing with others. They're challenging themselves, learning from rejection, and taking bold action when it matters most. In this segment, we'll break down 3 powerful ideas that can shift your mindset and propel you toward greater success. Let's start with the first and most important challenge, you. Now, we often think of competition as beating someone else, but the most important competition is usually within. And according to John Miller, there are 3 people you have to overcome if you truly want to be successful. I love what your dad said, because he was a wrestling coach at Cornell for 25 years. And he said, to you, he said, John, there's 3 people you're going to have to beat if you want to be successful, right? And love for you to share that story with our listeners.
I've written 5 books, and my dad has made it into every book. Not huge, just one story per book. I didn't overdo it, but the man was a good teacher. He was a pastor of Christian churches, two different churches for 40 years. And he was a wrestling coach, Ivy League wrestling coach for 25 years. So he just had a lot to teach. He was a storyteller. And he'd say, Johnny, tonight on that mat, you have 3 people to beat. Number 1, your opponent. Number 2, yourself, overcome your fears. Well, that still applies. And then thirdly, he'd say, you need to beat the referee. Wait a minute, Dad. You mean the guy in the black and white striped shirt who made 3 questionable calls? I only lost by a point. If he hadn't made those 3 questionable calls, I would have won the match. And he'd always say, you must be, this is the punchline, and I'm shortening this metaphor, but the punchline is, you must be good enough to beat the ref. You must be good enough to beat the ref. And I always kid people about my daughter, Molly, who is actually on our team now at QBQ Inc. She's in her 30s. When she was in high school, she'd come home and say, well, Coach Jay said we would have won the game if the officials had called more penalties on the other team. And then I'd have to say, but Molly, your team didn't score any goals. They lost 1-0. And the 40-year-old coach would teach the athletes to blame the referees. And that's what happens in America today. We're always teaching blame. We're modeling blame. I mean, we could talk about politics and people make hearings in Congress, all kinds of finger pointing going on. But all that matters is John Miller, as a father, as a grandfather, as a husband, as a professional. Am I asking whodunit kind of questions, or am I asking, what can I do right now to solve the problem? What can I do to make a difference? Those are much better questions. I must be good enough to beat the ref. My last comment there, Charles, is the referee is a metaphor for anything beyond my control. I cannot control the officials. So can I be better on the field or on the mat? My dad would simply say, all right, you lost by a point, but could you have taken your opponent down one more time for another 2 points? Could you have escaped in the 3rd period? He always made me look in the mirror, and that's a good thing.
That is good. And I love just your twist on the Serenity Prayer that if you want to win, don't focus on or complain about the things beyond your control, period. Some problems are best to let go of. For all the rest, be good enough to beat the ref. If there's a trait that separates high achievers from everyone else, it's their ability to reframe rejection. They understand that setbacks aren't final. They're just feedback. As Guy Kawasaki states, whether it's an investor turning you down, a job application getting rejected, or an idea that doesn't take off right away, those who win in the long run see obstacles as stepping stones, not dead ends. When remarkable people, you say, don't hear no, and I found that fascinating. They hear not now, not yet, or yes, if.
Yes, I mean, it's part of the grit mentality that, if you think you're going to embrace the growth mentality, you're immediately going to be good. You're going to create a great product or service, and then the world is going to beat its path to your door. It's time you wake up from that dream, because that ain't how it's going to happen. So people are going to tell you, no, no, you can't even come see me. No, I don't want to order anything. No, I don't want to pay. I mean, you just, you cannot hear no. You have to hear, like you said, not yet, or yes, but if you do this, I'll give you a yes. That's the kind of attitude you have to have.
And Melanie Perkins did that too, right? 299 rejections you mentioned before the one said yes. And now Canva, multi-billion-dollar company, has disrupted the whole graphic design market. And it wouldn't be so if she didn't have the grit, right? If she just said, well, I guess there's no demand for this and I should just stop.
Yeah. I cannot honestly tell you that if I were turned down 299 times, I would have kept going. But thank you, God, that she did.
The final success principle is inspired by Mike Robbins, and it's a game changer. He states, stop waiting for perfect. Too many of us hold back waiting for that ideal moment, that flawless plan, or perfect conditions, only to watch opportunities slip away. The truth, waiting until you feel ready is one of the most common ways we miss opportunities. We also let a lot of our fears get in the way of living up to our potential. And I love the story that you have on swing hard just in case you hit it. A lot of life is just showing up.
Yeah, I played baseball all those years, as I was mentioning, and played with this guy who just used to, his guy named Jeff Jenkins, who actually made it to the big leagues and was big personality, but he used to just swing so hard. Sometimes he'd swing and miss and fall down. And we were taking batting practice one day. I mean, this is back, we were 18-year-old kids, and someone's like, Jeff, why do you swing so hard, dude? He's like, just in case I hit it. And I was like, wow, like that's a really interesting way to think about life. Let me swing as hard as I can. Now, I'm not a hitting instructor, and maybe some coaches would argue don't do that every single time. But the point being, in life, are we willing to go for it with the possibility that we might make it versus hold ourselves back? Right? It's the Wayne Gretzky quote of, I missed 100% of the shots I never took. And again, it's a cliche. We talk about it, but the reality is, in life, are we willing to go for it? Are we willing to put our hand up?
Now, success in business and in life comes down to one thing: relationships. Whether you're leading a team, working with clients, or building a brand, the way you connect with people determines your impact. The best companies, the best leaders, and the most trusted professionals, they all have one thing in common: they put people first. In this segment, we're going to explore what it really takes to craft lasting connections and to build trust and loyalty. And it all starts with one game-changing principle: going the extra mile. As John Miller shares a powerful story that proves how much of a difference it can make. Because most people do what is required, but great people do a little bit more.
I was in the Rock Bottom restaurant on a busy Thursday at noon. There were no places to sit, no booths, no tables. And they sat me at the bar, and I was waiting a few minutes, and a young man runs by me carrying a big load of dirty dishes on a heavy tray. And he stops and he looks at me and he says, "Sir, have you been helped?" And I said, "No, but I'm kind of in a rush." He said, "Well, I can help you, sir. What would you like?" And, I said, "The salad and maybe a roll." And he said, "Great. What would you like to drink?" I said, "Well, I'll have a Diet Coke. It's my favorite." And he said, "I'm sorry, sir. We only sell Pepsi products." And I said, "That's all right. I'll have water and lemon." He said, "Great." So he's gone. And a couple minutes later, he's back with the salad and the roll and the water and the lemon. And this is a very key part of the story, Charles. And as a speaker, the more you tell your stories, you kind of find nuggets that you didn't see when you first started telling the story. But I was satisfied with the water and the lemon and the salad and the roll. He did not need to return. But I ask your clients right now, your members, how competitive is your marketplace today? How competitive is it? So do we need to go above and beyond? Do we need to be the company with the extra edge? Well, that's only going to happen when we have people, individuals going the extra mile. The extra edge comes from the extra mile people go. So anyway, I'm sitting there enjoying my lunch, and suddenly I feel the wind of enthusiasm blowing behind my back. The long arm of service stretches over my shoulder, places right next to my plate a 20-ounce bottle of Diet Coke, which is what I'd asked for. And I said, "Wow, thanks." He says, "You're welcome." He takes off. And I remember thinking, I'm going to hire him, and I don't care if he went to college. That's another discussion. But anyway, I want to hire somebody who takes action and cares about the customer and has a heart of service and has energy and desire. And I just sensed all this good stuff, accountability. So I called him over and I said, I thought you didn't sell Coke products. He says, we don't. I said, well, where did this come from? He says, grocery store around the corner. I said, really? Who paid for it? He said, I did, sir, just $1 out of my tip money. So I hired him for sales. And then I said, how did you have time to go get it? I'll never forget it. He straightens, he smiles, and he says, I didn't go get it, sir. I sent my manager. How many of us would like to send our managers, Charles? And I said, I just stared at him like, wow. And then I said, why? Why did you do this? He looked kind of disappointed. He said, I'm sorry, sir. Didn't you want one? Didn't you want a Diet Coke? I said, yes, I did. You went the extra mile. And there's more to that story. But bottom line, he didn't, as he was running past where I was sitting and he stopped, he didn't say, hey, who's supposed to be covering this area? He didn't say, why don't I get paid more? He didn't say, when are we going to get additional training? And he didn't blame the customer. Why can't the customer learn to read our menu? He simply said, how can I serve you today, sir? That is a QBQ. And his name was Jacob. His last name was Miller. There's no relationship here. John Miller, Jacob Miller. But that's the kind of person I want on my team. But more importantly, Charles, that's the kind of person I want to be.
Few companies have refined customer experience quite like Zappos. Their success wasn't just about selling shoes. It was about building real connections with customers. So what's their secret? They don't see customer service as a cost. They see it as their greatest competitive advantage. As Dr. Paul Zak explains in our next clip, they train their teams to focus on relationships, not just transactions. And the result? Lifelong loyalty.
Associates spent a lot of time at Zappos in the early days. And as listeners may know, they have no limit on how long people on the phones can stay talking to customers. And their longest call to date, last I heard, it was over 10 hours. Because someone who just was having a great time and they're not having a crisis. Sometimes they have people having a crisis, but this is like they're just having a great conversation. And so they want you to build those, what they call personal emotional connections. I would call immersion neurologically, that connection with other people. So why would you talk on the phone for 10 hours? What's the ROI from that? They bought one thing or two things or maybe nothing, but you're both from St. Louis and now you're having this long conversation about how much St. Louis and how great it is and I love barbecue and whatever. What are you doing? You're creating a super fan, right? So you're saying, oh my gosh, I had such a good conversation to this customer. What is that customer going to say when he or she then talks to their friends that night or the next day? Oh my God, I was on the phone with Zappos for 10 hours. I had to go pee twice. It was crazy because the guy was so nice. And I really wanted to find this thing. They didn't have it. They were calling around. We just hung out. They're the best place ever. So now maybe I made a $100 sale from that one customer, but I've created multiples of that in terms of word of mouth. And we know that social proof is the most effective way to promote a product.
One of the most underrated skills in leadership and in life is emotional intelligence. In this segment, we're unpacking 2 game-changing principles of emotional intelligence, seeing beyond first impressions and mastering emotional regulation. And to kick things off, we have a powerful story from Bill Williams, one that drives home a simple yet profound truth. We are often too quick to judge. Something I think everyone can learn from in these days where there's just so much animosity, bitterness, hate in this world is everyone we interact with should feel special, valued, and important.
I just saw a video yesterday where there is a young woman pulls into a grocery store parking lot in a beautiful little white convertible car. And a woman says to her, wow, nice car. And she says, oh, thank you. And then walks into the store and buys a very few groceries. And she, goes to cash out and she's using some form of food stamps. And the woman says to her, oh, great. Yeah, you're driving a sports car, but you're buying food with government subsidized funding. And the woman's humiliated, embarrassed, and just walks away without really saying anything. The story goes on. 20 minutes later, she gets home and she pulls into her neighbor's driveway and says, thanks for lending me the car and taking care of my son. I didn't have any other opportunity to go and buy groceries, and I didn't have the money to do it. I couldn't have done it. So too often we're self-absorbed and we're putting our own version of that movie forward. And there's another side to it. So I just invite us to really pause, rewind. Don't be so self-absorbed. Look for another perspective.
One of the greatest challenges in emotional intelligence isn't just how we perceive others, it's how we regulate ourselves. But moments of pressure, stress, and conflict, most people act like thermometers. They react to the temperature of the room, absorbing that negativity, frustration, or chaos. But according to Dr. Sharon Melnick, the best leaders, they act like thermostats. They set the temperature.
The way that you go through your day is like a thermometer. And we've all, kind of think of your experience where your mental and emotional state is kind of like going up and down all day long. It's as if other people act and you just react. You feel more like the casualty than the creator of your experience. And what you want to be in your power is to be instead the thermostat. And when you're the thermostat, you set the temperature. You set the tone. You decide who you are and how you feel about yourself and your yes and your no. And importantly, your vision for how the situation can be better and more effective. You're able to bring everyone else along with your vision, and you get the outcome that you want and you make it better for everyone. So you want to be the thermostat. And, again, another reason why I kind of wrote the book is that when you're not in your power, when you are being the thermometer, you start to kind of get in that mental swirl or be emotionally hijacked. Like you're distressed, inside, and you start to show up as a diminished version of yourself. And as a leader, the way that you try to make the situation better often makes it worse, or at least just perpetuates it as it is. Because usually you're kind of like, well, I said something, well, I tried, and then it didn't work, and everyone is more hopeless and entrenched. But the moment that you step into your power, you shift the power dynamic. And you can be the thermostat. You can be a change agent. You can be the one who kind of leads everyone into a better way. And that's what you want.
Your mindset isn't just how you think, it's the foundation of everything you do. It shapes your confidence, your decisions, and even the way you see opportunities and challenges. But here's the catch. What you believe determines what you achieve. If your mindset is working against you, success will always feel out of reach. The most successful people don't just think differently, they challenge their beliefs, reframe their obstacles, and train their minds for success. In this segment, we're going to explore 3 powerful mindset shifts that can transform the way you see the world and your place in it. And we start with Hal Elrod's simple but powerful framework.
When you go, the A and the B and the C, they are sequential. So when you accept life as it is, you allow yourself to be at peace with the things you can't change. And by the way, I want to explain to everyone, if I were you, to make this integrated into your life, I would commit to a 7-day challenge. You do a 30-day challenge, but 7 days is easy to wrap your head around. You might forget on day 14. 7 days. For the next 7 days, live by the 5-minute rule. Every time you find yourself upset, set the timer for 5 minutes. Give yourself space to feel your emotions, cuss, moan. Don't censor yourself. Feel it. In fact, the more you can express it, this is not fair. Like the more you can express it, the more you're allowing yourself to release it and to alchemize those painful emotions into the state of peace, which is 5-minute timer goes off. You go, oh, can't change it. I can't change what happened 5 minutes ago. So right now I got a choice. I can continue to resist reality and be upset, or I can be at peace. Once you get into peace, and it'll be easier said than done at first, but it'll get easier every single time you set that 5-minute timer. You will evolve and develop yourself into someone that can actually get to peace quickly, until eventually you won't need the 5 minutes. You'll set your timer for 5 minutes and go, 30 seconds in, you go, what's the point of wasting my 4.5 minutes being upset? I'll just say can't change it and move on now. That allows you at peace. Then the being grateful allows you to transcend peace and go beyond that to actually being in a state of, wow, although I'm facing challenges in my life right now, I have so much to be grateful for. And then choosing your optimal state of consciousness, that could be moving into a state of love, or a state of, for me, I call it inner freedom. It's the most fundamental state of consciousness, where it's the state where you get to just choose. Or for me, sometimes it's bliss. I want to be in a state of just joy, love, gratitude, all of that wrapped up with a bow to me is a state of bliss. Just like life's amazing. Yes, it's difficult. Yes, it sucks. Yes, I broke my ankle yesterday. Yes, I am 50 grand in debt right now. But this moment is the best moment of my life, so I might as well enjoy this one life that I've been blessed to live. So your state of consciousness is the optimal state. You're going from acceptance of peace, which is peace, to gratitude, which is being aware of what you have to be grateful for, to now what's your optimal state of consciousness.
We all have beliefs that shape our decisions, but what if some of those beliefs are holding us back instead of helping us move forward? Misbeliefs, false assumptions we accept as truth, can quietly sabotage our success. They make us doubt ourselves, limit our ambitions, and convince us that things are impossible before we even try. If you were ever told, I'm just not that good at that particular thing, or I'll never be successful at this, you might be carrying misbeliefs without even realizing it. Let's break down how these hidden thoughts shape our world and how to challenge them with Dan Ariely.
If you take something and you say, what's a misbelief that I really don't care if people have? You might say it's the belief that the earth is flat. Because, if somebody believes that the earth is flat, it doesn't change the curvature of the earth. The earth is going to be the earth, whether people believe it or not. So you could say, why do I care if people believe that? But the reality is that it's not about the outside, it's about the inside. And if somebody adopts the perspective that the earth is flat, it means that they think that NASA is lying to them, and the government is lying to them, and every government is lying. And all pilots know the truth and they lie to them. And there's no such things as satellites. And, build it up and up and up. And it becomes a lens from which they view the world, and they become suspicious of everything.
If there's one skill that separates those who thrive from those who struggle, it's the ability to reframe challenges as opportunities. Life is unpredictable. Obstacles are inevitable. But as Kathy Caprino states, the way you interpret them determines whether they become stepping stones or roadblocks.
Sometimes people will come to me, look, I've interviewed 50 times or 30 times, and I get to the last round and then I don't get it. And then they think to themselves, they may not say these words, but they think, I'm a loser, clearly. I'm not valuable. I'm not wanted. I'm not. And I will always say, now hang on here. Of all those jobs, how many did you really want? And often they didn't want any of those jobs. They're doing it because they're desperate. They won't need money. We understand these reasons, but that's not the job they want. And so I say to them, you're not a loser. Your system is operating under the internal understanding you don't want to be employed there. You don't want that job, and you're not going to get it. So once you can have a reframe like that, it makes you see the whole challenge extremely differently, and you're not the loser in the story. It's usually things are happening for a reason that you're not actually aware of.
If success were easy, everyone would do it. The truth is, setbacks, discomfort, and long, uncertain roads are all part of the journey. What separates those who rise from those who quit isn't talent or luck, it's being resilient and adaptable. In this segment, we'll explore how to embrace discomfort, play the long game, and recognize when stepping backward is actually the best move forward. First, let's talk about discomfort. Discomfort is something most people try to avoid. But here's the paradox. If you want to grow, if you want to be stronger, more capable, and more successful, you have to learn from it and lean into it. Courage isn't the absence of fear. It's the ability to act despite it. And as Candace Dobie mentions, the most resilient people aren't fearless. They've just trained themselves to be comfortable being uncomfortable.
You are going to be uncomfortable acting courageously. And this is why a lot of people don't move forward with acting courageously. And what do we need to do then if discomfort is a part of this? We have to be able to become familiar with it. A lot of people run away from discomfort. You don't want to feel it, so you don't say the thing that you need to say. But we need to become familiar with it, because what we are familiar with, we can manage. And one of the most important things that we can do when it comes to being familiar and managing our discomfort is we have to actually practice being uncomfortable. So there is that practice again. One of the things that I do for myself, and I would recommend to other people who just want to get practice in flexing their courage muscle, is court opportunities for discomfort every day. And if you don't do it every day, make it regular. But what I can tell you is that every single day includes an opportunity for you to sit in discomfort.
Greatness isn't instant, it's earned. It's easy to look at someone else's achievements and think they got where they were because they were gifted, lucky, or had all the right opportunities. But what truly separates the great from the good isn't natural talent, it's effort, resilience, and the ability to keep going when progress feels slow or non existent. If you've ever felt like success is taking longer than expected, this lesson from Guy Kawasaki is for you. You also mentioned something surprising to me, that none of your guests on your podcast followed the route of just going right, fast tracking it right to the top. They all started at entry level positions and labored for years. And it makes no difference where you begin or who assists you. What matters, and people need to remember this, is your final destination.
Listen, if your idea of success is you're going to go to an Ivy League school and then you're going to go to Goldman Sachs or you're going to go to McKinsey and you have instant success, I mean, yes, I guess that's possible, especially if you're a billionaire's kid. But in general, that's just not how the world works. And God bless you if you can pull it off. But I would say that even if you did pull it off, you probably don't have the worldliness to then succeed, because you gotta learn, you gotta take your lumps, you gotta show up, you gotta get the shit beat out of you to succeed.
We often think of progress as a straight line, always moving forward, always climbing higher. But the truth is, sometimes the best way to move forward is to take a step back. Whether you're adjusting to a goal, making a strategic pivot, or embracing a temporary setback, real resilience isn't about relentlessly pushing, it's about making smart, intentional moves that set you up for long-term success. As Julie Winkle Giulioni and Bev K highlight, this principle is also key in thriving in your career. Other two pieces of wisdom nuggets that I pulled out of that was, there's lots of ways around. On a rock wall in your career development, countless paths that are available to get you from point A to point B. And probably the most profound one that I think a lot more leaders should be mindful of, or just individuals in general, is sometimes a step back moves you forward. Getting to your ultimate destination might require some counterintuitive move down initially before you can move upward and forward.
Right. And I see it time and time again where that looks great. There's more dollars in it. There's more of everything in it, a better parking space, whatever it is. I want that. And I get there, and that A is harder than I ever thought. And that A is causing me problems in my home life that I never dreamed it would. Why did I ever do it? And it's where we lose great people, especially technical people who will choose that upward move. And when it's not right, they would rather leave the company completely than admit it.
You know, the other thing I think around this taking a step back is we're starting to honor that in a different way than we did perhaps before the pandemic. I think the events of the last several years, having to look mortality right in the face, trying to reprioritize where work fits within my broader life. I think there are a lot more employees who are willing to do that today.
We often think success is about willpower, motivation, and sheer determination. But in reality, success is built on habits, those small, consistent actions that compound over time. And the best part, habits don't just rely on our discipline. According to Dr. Wendy Wood, they also are shaped by our environment and the systems you put in place. Are there any other common mistakes that you've seen that really deter people from trying to break those pesky bad habits that just seem to resurface throughout time?
Yeah, it's not understanding the role of the environment. So we focus, as you said, on willpower, on why we should do something. We talk ourselves into it. We feel good because we've made a decision we're going to change, without realizing that unless we change the context to make the desired behavior easier and the one that you're trying to get rid of harder, you're not likely to be able to maintain change over time. So it's understanding the role of the environment. And let me give you an example that from some recent research that we did on vaccinations. COVID vaccinations, there's lots of data on what led people to get a COVID vaccination to begin with. And much of the research is about people's political beliefs, their health beliefs, their motivation, their concern for their family. All of those things are certainly important. But one of the important features that was often overlooked is how easy is it to get a vaccine. So we looked in California and Chicago at how far people were, the distance that they were from a vaccine clinic of any kind. And we found that people who were closer to a vaccine clinic, no matter what their health beliefs, no matter what their political beliefs, were more likely to get a vaccine. People who were further away, again, regardless of their beliefs, were less likely to do so. It's a very simple explanation that if you're ambivalent about doing something, or if you've gotten tired of the struggle of trying to make yourself do something, then if it's easier, you're just going to be more likely to do it. That cost-benefit analysis shifts in the direction of the behavior. But if it's difficult, if the vaccine sites are far away, if your gym is far away, if you have lots of cookies and other things on your kitchen counter, then it's going to be hard for you to be able to follow through. So the role of context is really critical, and it's something that we overlook.
It's one thing to build good habits in your personal life, but what about work? Even in fast-paced workplaces, old habits are hard to break, and new habits are even harder to establish. But according to Dr. Britt Andreatta, the organizations and teams that thrive aren't just relying on individual effort, they're creating systems and cultures that reinforce success.
Think about when you were learning how to drive a car for the first time. We're doing that in my household right now with my teenager. It's a lot, the accelerator, the brake, the mirrors, the steering wheel. For some of us, it was a clutch, right? There was a lot to think about. And yet, once you get the hang of it, you don't think about the act of driving anymore. You can get to your destination and kind of be like, oh, wait, I'm here. That's the basal ganglia at work. Same thing when you learn a new app on your smartphone. At first, you have to kind of think about it, and then now you don't even have to think about it. So the basal ganglia is amazing. Those of us who work in adult professional learning, we are often trying to change habits. And so you want to think about repetition. It's grooving that neural pathway. And the more you run that neural pathway, the stronger that neural pathway gets. And so there is kind of some research that there's a magic number. I mean, there's a big range, but kind of on average, it's 40 to 50 repetitions of a behavior is when that habit kind of starts to really get formed. And at 66 repetitions, the neurons actually get thicker. They can measure them getting thicker. So they're a lot like a muscle. You use them, they get stronger. You ignore them, they atrophy. So when we think about workplace learning, we're oftentimes asking people to step away from a habit that's well grooved and comfortable and they don't have to think about it, and instead start to do a behavior that's awkward, new, requires concentration, is not an automatic behavior yet. So as a learning designer, you've got to start grooving those repetitions in the learning event. You've got to have them practice. Otherwise, when they go back to their office or the field or whatever, they're naturally going to go to the old behavior unless you're intentionally getting people to that 40 or 50 number.
We often celebrate individual talent, the star employee, the standout performer, the natural leader. But the truth is, success is rarely a solo effort. It's not just about having the best people, it's about having the right team. And the best teams don't happen by accident. They're built with intention, trust, and strategy. In this segment, we'll explore two powerful insights from Dr. David Burkus that challenge traditional thinking about teamwork. The first one is in regards to when we think about championship teams or world-class organizations, we assume they're great because they have the best talent. But here's the reality. Individual talent doesn't guarantee success. The best teams don't just collect talent, they develop it. So let's explore how the right environment can make all the individuals better as part of a team. I love the statement in the book that talent doesn't make the team makes the talent. That's kind of counterintuitive because for many individuals, they feel like if you have better individuals, more intelligent, smarter individuals that can perform at a higher level, that team, when they put them together, that team is going to be more productive.
Yeah, well, so did the people at Google when they conducted Project Aristotle to try and figure out what made for the best team, right? If you talk to the people that ran that study, massive study, tens of thousands of people, hundreds of thousands of data points across the whole company too, not just, US based, but internationally. And they thought it was going to be a formula, right? Like you need this percentage of introverts and this percentage of extroverts. And you need this many STEM people and this many artistic and blah, blah, blah. And if you do that, you'll build the perfect team. And it turned out none of those things correlated to the success or failure of the team. What it came down to were the norms, the habits of behavior, the way people interacted on a team, whether or not they had kind of a sense of each other's and had empathy for each other, or whether or not they had a sense of psychological safety. All of these things are cultural things. They're not skills or abilities things. And you can't recruit your way out of a crappy team culture. You can't. And even if you could, unfortunately, at least my experience, and it's anecdotal, but I bet it matches yours and everyone who's listening to this, a lot of times those really talented people are also not exactly non-toxic. I won't say they're toxic to a team culture, but they're not exactly healing to a team culture. They want to be those stars a lot of times. And so that, we've all had experiences of this, attempting to recruit that star player and not having it work out, because you can't recruit your way out of a bad culture. What you can do is work to change the culture of the team you have now, and you'd be amazed who might turn into a star.
Some teams treat everyone the same, like interchangeable pieces on a board. But truly great teams, according to David Burkus, they play chess, not checkers. Great teams play chess because in checkers, every piece is the same and moves in the same way.
Yeah. Oh man, that's one of my favorite highlights in the book, and very few people ever pull that out. Thank you. Yeah, and I should say I remember hearing this concept or something similar to this from Marcus Buckingham first, I think. But yeah, the idea in checkers, if you ever played checkers, every piece moves the same way, and they all only move forward until you get to the back of the board, and then you can king me and they move, but they have to stay on the same squares, what have you. In chess, every single piece, or not every single, because I guess there's 2 rooks and 2 bishops and 2 knights, but they all have different patterns to how they move. Not everyone on your team can do every job, and not everyone on your team should do every job. And without that sense of empathy and understanding what people's strengths and weaknesses are, what their preferences are, what have you, you don't get to the ability to see each person as unique and different chess piece that contributes to a greater whole, right? Now, that does mean it comes with more complexity. It's certainly easier to get your head around checkers than it is chess, but it also comes with more opportunity. There are far more ways to win a chess game than there are to win a checkers game.
Great communication isn't just about what to say, it's about how you say it. So whether you're networking, leading a team, or just having everyday conversations, the way you communicate shapes how people perceive you. The best communicators aren't necessarily the loudest or the most charismatic. They're the ones who connect, engage, and leave a lasting impression. In our next segment, we're going to explore 2 key communication skills from Matt Abrahams. The first video focuses on how to get better with small talk, because when done right, it's not small at all. So you give some great structures on how to plan spontaneous conversations, but you say there's one, the Swiss Army knife of structures. Perhaps you can give us insight into what that is and kind of walk through an example using it.
Yes, it's 3 simple questions. What, so what, now what? These 3 questions can help you manage so many spontaneous speaking situations. Let me explain how it works. The what is your idea, your product, your service, your update, your feedback. The so what is why is it important and relevant to the audience you're speaking to? And then finally, the now what is what comes next. Maybe it's, I'd like to take your questions, or let's set up another meeting, or here are the next 3 steps I need you to take.
Now that you know how to engage in great conversations, let's talk about how you sound more confident and credible when you speak. Like, and how. While they might seem harmless, they can make you sound uncertain and unfocused. The best speakers and leaders eliminate filler words, so to create a more powerful, concise, and authoritative communication. Matt Abrahams has a great technique that helps you remove those pesky filler words from your communication.
Pauses are important. People who have higher status and power in certain contexts will absolutely pause more than those who have lower status and power. So you actually are seen as more confident and competent by pausing. But the other thing is, you can't say anything when you're inhaling. I challenge everybody to try. The next time you have a moment, try to say something while you're inhaling. You can't do it. Speaking is an exit-only event. You have to push air out. So if I am completely out of breath when I'm done speaking, I inhale, I can't say I build in a pause, and then I move on to my next phrase.
We live in a world overloaded with information. Social media, news, opinions, and data come at us from every direction. The ability to think critically, filter out noise, and make sound decisions has never been more important. In this segment, we'll break down how to sharpen your thinking by embracing a balanced approach to skepticism and optimism. I'm going to turn it over to Dr. Kristen Lee to show us how to be a better skeptimist. I like this skeptimistic mindset, which you list in the book, which is really common reasons why people believe in something. And you list 5 of them. And it's because I believe it, because we believe it, because I want to believe it, because I've always believed it, and it's in my selfish interest to believe it, none of which are really good reasons to believe anything. Instead, you say adopt this skeptimistic mindset that blends the traits of being a skeptic and an optimist to become a better critical thinker. So perhaps just unpack that a little bit for our audience so they can get more insights into that approach.
Well, I think the audience will love that one of my graduate students was the OG, the original. He used the word skeptimist, and I just loved it. And we were talking about like that balance in life. Like for any of us trying to maneuver, we need to be skeptical. We need to question everything. I believe so much in questioning. And I always tell those that I serve, whether I'm giving a corporate talk or I'm teaching in my classroom or I'm like coaching leaders, I always say the marker of a good inquiry is turning up with more questions than answers. So for the audience, when you hear someone say, I emphatically know everything, or I have the answer, or I have the 5-step formula, and if we just do X and Y, then we're going to boss up and everything's going to be great. I would say to that, run. Be extremely skeptical when someone seems to be very self assured, because chances are either one, they might be compensated because of their insecurities, or two, they might really truly believe that they're right. And then their opinions have solidified and those theories haven't really been tested. They might also be subject to what's known as confirmation bias, where we come up with an idea and then we only pay attention to evidence that supports that. So those are real traps, right? So I think we have to be healthy skeptics. If we're so skeptical that we become cynical, jaded, bitter, I'm not convinced that that's necessarily productive. I think there's a level with that. And there comes in the optimist part.
In a fast-paced world, we often glorify quick decisions. We assume that thinking fast means thinking smart. But in reality, some of the biggest mistakes happen because we react too quickly instead of thinking things through. Slow thinking doesn't mean indecisiveness. It means we're taking the time to analyze, reflect, and see things from multiple perspectives before we jump to conclusions. The most effective leaders and problem solvers know when to pause, process, and make deliberate decisions. Let's dive into why slow thinking is a hidden superpower, according to Dr. Barbara Oakley.
We all know somebody, for example, who can figure out like a math problem really quickly. And then when we can't do it, we think either A, we're kind of stupid, or B, maybe math is just not for me. But there's actually some people are just slower in putting things together. Their mind is making connections in the background, but this can mean that they actually are learning the information more deeply. Friedrich Hayek, the Nobel Prize winner, said he was a terribly slow learner. And he'd be embarrassed when he was studying economics with his friends who were like, pooh, they could just get it all instantly. But the fact that he was so slow is why he felt that he won the Nobel Prize, because his slow way of figuring things out meant that where his friends would just jump right over something and assume it's true. He could not do that. And he would struggle. And that's where he would find that there'd been mistakes in some of the previous ways of looking things. And that's, of course, how he won the Nobel Prize.
In today's world, talent alone isn't enough. You have to be seen, heard, and remembered. So whether you're a leader, an entrepreneur, or building a career, the way you present yourself to the world shapes your opportunities, credibility, and influence. But here's the mistake most people make. They assume influence is about expertise alone. It's not. The truth, influence doesn't just happen. You have to claim it. Being great at what you do is important, but if no one knows about it, it won't matter. The most impactful leaders and professionals don't wait to be noticed. They make sure they're seen and heard. Let's explore why visibility is the first step to influence with Lita Citroën. So let's talk about visibility, because a lot of people say, I don't want to be visible. I just want to build my brand, but be in the background. Why doesn't that work?
Gosh, I do hear that quite a bit, right? Why can't I just write my code and know people will take me seriously? Because the world just doesn't work that way. It just doesn't. I mean, I wish I had a more scientific explanation, but it doesn't. It's really hard to be influenced by you if I don't see you and hear from you. And that's where the opportunity lies, because everyone's voice has merit. Everyone's voice has a place in this world. So coming forward with that, again, it doesn't mean you want to start a nonprofit or a movement or create, systemic change on a global basis. But it can just mean that you want to have more influence on the way that your team is operating or that your company is making better decisions. And in order to drive that kind of change, you have to be seen. We have to see you. Think about Greta Thunberg when she was 15 years old and sat in front of Swedish parliament to talk about how terrified she was of climate change. Could she have done that in a letter to the editor? Maybe. Could she have done that by writing a post on social media? Maybe. But she sat in front of them and looked them in the eyes and had that message. That's the kind of visibility she needed to have to start that conversation in the way she needed to have it. It doesn't have to be that big for all of us, but we do need to see you in order to hear from you.
Once you step into visibility, the next challenge is making sure people remember you for the right reasons. And that starts with one thing: authenticity. Too often, people play it safe by copying what's already been done. But the ones who truly make an impact, they create, they innovate, and they bring something fresh. If you're just replicating what others have done, you're always going to be the second-rate version of someone else. The leaders, entrepreneurs, and artists who change the game are the ones who embrace what makes them different, according to Todd Henry.
There were two distinct paths that people took in the music business. One of them was if you're a band and you want to very quickly get gigs and fill clubs, you would just play other people's music and people would show up because they're like, oh, I love the song September by Earth, Wind and Fire, right? Or whatever, which is fine. But then the moment somebody came along and played that song a little better than you, like you lost your following because they didn't care about you. They cared about the music. And then there were other people who were like, we're going to play our own music. We're going to do our own thing. And you know what? They played tiny little clubs with like 2 people, who showed up for their show. And then maybe the next week there were 4. And then maybe the next week there were 8 and then 16 and then 25. And then suddenly they're filling a 100-person room and a 500 and 1,000. And you could see them over time. People with talent would grow that audience of incredibly loyal followers. Why? Because they couldn't get that music anywhere else. They were the only ones making that music because it was their music. And so when I say cover bands don't change the world, I don't mean there's anything wrong with being a cover band. If you just want to go make money and have fun, go be a cover band. That's fine. But if you really want to create something of lasting value that's really going to change the world around you, there's something you can do that no one else around you can do. And you have to commit to doing that thing, putting that thing into the world. And you can do both. The Beatles started as a cover band and then they evolved into an original band, right? They started as a cover band, but they didn't end up there. And that's fine because as you're learning your chops, sometimes the best way to do that is to imitate other people, to emulate other people. But at some point you have to step out on the branch. You have to create your own thing. You have to find your own voice. So that's what I encourage you to do. Just don't be complacent and don't be satisfied with just copying other people. Try to find the thing that you are uniquely capable of adding to the conversation.
Now that we've talked about visibility and authenticity, let's take it a step further, because it's not just about being seen or being different, it's about owning your unique edge. Most successful people don't wait for validation. They don't downplay their strengths or hesitate to step forward. They own who they are unapologetically. If you've ever held back because you felt you weren't ready or good enough, this is a great reminder from Dr. Debbie Turner Bell that you already have what it takes. The only thing missing is your belief in it.
I love to say was, I wasn't Debbie Turner because I won Miss America. I won Miss America because I was Debbie Turner. And so I was determined not to change, not one bit of that, and just simply be who God created me to be. Because what I knew for sure then, and I still know it today, is nobody can out Debbie Turner me. I'm the only one, and I can do it better than anybody. So why would I try to be like anyone else? And that's a message that I've tried to share, particularly with young people everywhere I go, is nobody can be who you are. You're singularly unique. And that gives you an edge in a way that no one else can have if we are true and be authentic to who we really are.
Credibility isn't just about being seen, it's about being trusted. It's the foundation that makes people listen, respect, and act in a way you say. And here's the reality: credibility isn't a one-time achievement. It must be something that is demonstrated consistently. Most credible leaders don't just hold positions of authority, they bring authenticity, experience, and a proven track record that validates their experience. The first time you earn credibility is through your competence, showing you have the skills, knowledge, and experience. The second time you have to earn credibility is through consistency, proving that you can deliver time and time again on that, and people recognize you for it, as Marshall Goldsmith states. Everyone wants to be an influencer and they want greater credibility, but you have to earn credibility twice.
Let me talk about that. It's a very important point for many of the people listening to us right now. In my book, The Earned Life, I talk about credibility must be earned twice. Now, what is credibility? You want to be respected. You want to be recognized. You want people to listen to you. That's what credibility is. What does it mean credibility must be earned twice? Part of credibility is being competent at what you do. You need to be good at what you do. That's only half of credibility. The other half is being recognized for being good at what you do, which is a completely different thing. And a lot of people don't get this. If you get this at a younger age, your life's going to be a lot better. Let me tell you what I mean by that. For example, books. I mentioned I've been fortunate enough to sell 4 million books. How many titles are on Amazon.com right now? Answer, 32.8 million. How many books do you have to sell in 1 year to be in the top half? The answer to that question is 2. 16.4 million books sold 0 to 1 copy last year. Now, again, I'm not arrogant enough to believe that my books are better than 16 million other books. I got a degree in math. Some of those books have got to be good. Just the numbers are the numbers, right? They're not all bad at 16 million. Some are better than anything I ever dreamed of, I'm sure. Nobody bought them. Part of credibility is you write a good book. The other part is somebody buys it. They're not the same thing.
Once you have built credibility, the next step is knowing what to do with your influence. Too often people chase influence for its own sake. More followers, more visibility, more recognition. But real influence isn't about personal status. It's about impact. It's about asking, if I had more influence, how would I use it? What change would I drive? And who would I help? Marshall Goldsmith provides some great advice that true leaders don't wait for permission to create change. They start where they are with what they have.
Question 1, if you became more powerful and influential, would the world be worse off or better off? Invariably, the huge majority of people say better off. Good. Question 2, does trying to become more powerful and influential make you feel uncomfortable? Oh, uncomfortable. Yes, many say yes. The hard question is 3. Look in the mirror. What's more important to you in life? Making a positive difference in the world or being comfortable? What's more important? You want to be comfortable? Don't change. You want to make a positive difference? Get over it. It makes you feel uncomfortable? So what? Suck it up. Showtime. Well, that really gets through to a lot of people. because I quit bragging about you don't promote yourself, the world would be better off and other people got ahead of you. Grow up.
One of the biggest traps in leadership and personal growth is idolizing others instead of learning from them. It's easy to put successful people on a pedestal, to believe that they have that secret ability that we will never have. But when we idolize instead of analyze, we miss some of the most important lessons. The best leaders study others, take their works, and apply it in their own way, according to Paulina Pompliano.
I distinguish between learning and idolizing because I say that we are like a society with a wandering eye. So we're always like, "Ooh, that person has it. They got it down. Like that's who I want to admire and put on a pedestal and try to copy one for one." When I was writing the book and when I write my profiles, I always in the back of my head think this person's life is not perfect. It's probably actually far from it, very far from it. The public perception rarely matches the private perception. Right now, Martha Stewart, there's a new documentary on Netflix on Martha Stewart. Oh my God. Like, as her career success was skyrocketing, her personal life was just completely in the dumpster. And she's promoting her weddings book, yet her marriage is falling apart. And it's like, if you look at her, because her entire brand is her name, her image, you are like, wow, she's the perfect hostess. She has the perfect life. But then you dig a little deeper and you're like, oh my God, this is not what I want for myself at all. So I wrote the book and I included that particular part in the introduction because I wanted people to read it as look at all the different paths you could take, but know that these are not perfect people. They're often very imperfect people who appear that they have figured out some small thing in their life. And my thing is, I've interviewed people like Melinda Gates and Richard Branson, but I never idolized those people. I knew when I was talking to Melinda Gates and when the whole situation was happening at the time, people were admiring their relationship, her and Bill Gates. They were saying relationship goals, all this stuff. And then you realize their marriage was falling apart and they got divorced. You cannot judge this idea of someone based on who you want them to be or how they appear in public. So, yeah, like maybe you want to be some of these people 10% of the time. You don't want to be them 100% of the time. So I really do think that there is something to learn from even the most imperfect people.
And you mentioned too that idolizing traps you into imitating perfect versions of imperfect people, right? And learning instead allows you to observe, synthesize, keep your authenticity, and pave your own path, which is really healthier as well. Because, like you said, a person's life is never linear. You don't see the other parts of their life, like you were mentioning with Martha Stewart, that just parts of their life that you wouldn't want to imitate and be a part of your life and make those, same missteps and sacrifices that they just don't show. And I think there's a lot of learning that can be had by people if they look at their whole life in their entirety instead of just looking at that one part of their life they're willing to show the world.
Exactly. And you just have to ask yourself anytime you find yourself idolizing someone, you have to ask yourself, like, am I willing to make the same mistakes, make the same sacrifices? Maybe you don't see your kids for years on end so you could focus on your career, things like that. It's like, do you want that to be your life?
Success without purpose feels empty. You can achieve milestones, earn promotions, and hit financial goals. But if there's no deeper meaning behind them, the excitement fades quickly. The most fulfilled and successful people don't just chase accomplishments. They chase growth, impact, and alignment with their deeper purpose. Because at the end of the day, success isn't just about what you achieve, it's about who you become in the process. So if you're setting goals, Hal Elrod recommends us to ask ourselves the following question. Is this just about the outcome, or is it about who I'm becoming?
Jim Rohn said, and I'm going to paraphrase, the purpose of a goal is not to reach the goal. The purpose of a goal is to become the type of person, in other words, develop the qualities that you need to achieve extraordinary goals. You might not hit this one, but if you commit and give it everything you have, then you're going to develop the mindset and the discipline required to achieve future goals. In other words, it's more about who you become in the process. And so when I applied that to my goal, I thought, oh, I can't fail. If I give it everything I have for the next 10 days, I may or may not reach the goal. I could fall short, but that doesn't change the growth I'm going to experience. I'm going to become a different version of myself on the other side of these 10 days.
If you're struggling to find your purpose, here's something to think about. Your greatest purpose is often hidden in your greatest pain. Many of the world's most successful and most impactful leaders didn't just wake up one day with a clear mission. Their purpose, according to Robert Glazer, came from overcoming struggles, learning hard lessons, and turning adversity into something meaningful. Many of us also, I find, are held back because we don't really fully recognize what those areas of weakness are, or maybe pain. And that pain itself can be transformed into our core purpose and mission because we best serve the person we used to be, right? That we can identify with. So instead of avoiding or denying a reality about yourself, why not embrace it? Because you can position yourself to really help people. Like you stated in the book, if you've had issues with reading and literacy, maybe you become a champion of literacy, but really leaning into that pain and identifying what in that experience can you draw from it and hopefully help other people with.
That's a great example. And I have not found a lot of people whose purpose isn't connected to pain in some way. And I think the trick for people, and again, I say maybe pain or formative experience, it's not, look, the word trauma is very loosely used these days, but like we all had formative things, or that to that 7-year-old or to that 11-year-old was traumatic at the time, whether in the grand scheme of things it wasn't, and it helped form your worldview and what was important. I think a lot of people struggle to connect those things because they don't want to be a victim in that story. They don't want to blame people. And the reality is, you don't have to blame. Again, I think I gave the example of someone who started an award-winning after-school program because their parent was a single parent who worked 3 jobs and wasn't around. Now, maybe they went to Harvard and that parent put themselves, and they are so grateful to that parent, but they were lonely like in that time. And so their purpose becomes, how do I help other people, not be lonely? I think they're afraid to make that connection because it feels like they're blaming the person. They're not. That parent did the best that they could.
At the end of the day, success isn't just about numbers, titles, and trophies. It's about living a life that feels truly meaningful. But what does that actually mean? Is it about impact, happiness, growth? The answer isn't the same for everyone, but those who live extraordinary lives define success on their own terms, and they align their actions with their values. Let's explore what it really takes to create a life of deep fulfillment with Dr. Marshall Goldsmith.
What does it take to live a great life? One, let's start with money. Well, all you need is enough money to live kind of middle class or above life. There's no study that shows once you get beyond that, more money is going to make you a lot happier. The common myth is I'll be happy when I get rich. No. If rich, I coach a lot of billionaires. I can tell you some are very happy and some are not happy at all. So yeah, that's just a myth. But you need enough money, enough. You don't need a fortune. You do need enough. Then after that was relationships. You want to have a great relationship with people you love. Dr. Bob Waldinger from Harvard has done this longitudinal research that illustrates the importance of relationships and having a great life. And then take care of your health. Now, assuming you're healthy, you got a good relationship with people you love, and you got enough money, what matters? 3 things. 1, you need a sense of aspiration. What is the purpose? Why am I doing this? It doesn't have to be religious, but it has to be something. People work hard. Okay, why are you working hard? You need to be able to answer this question. Why? What's the point? Number 2, though, you need achievement. A person like me, look, why am I talking to you? I don't want to be playing crappy golf with old men at the country club eating chicken sandwiches all day. I want to achieve something in life. You want to do something that has meaningful achievement. So you want achievement that is meaningful to you. You need to have an ambition. And your ambition is this achievement that's meaningful for you, hopefully which is aligned with your aspiration. And then the 3rd level is action. That's your day-to-day activities. You need to, number 1, be engaged in, and number 2, enjoy the process of life itself.
And live your own life, not someone else's version of it, right?
Exactly. So basically, look, if I'm doing what I love, 2, I'm achieving something meaningful, and 3, it's aligned with my higher purpose. And again, assuming I've got some money and I'm healthy and got good, I won. That's it. You won. You won the game of life. Victory, victory.
200 episodes, countless insights, and one mission to help you grow, lead, and succeed. We've explored what it takes to build resilience, master communication, strengthen relationships, and step into purpose. But at the heart of it all, success isn't just about what you know, it's about what you do with it. So here's my challenge to you. Take one idea from today's episode and apply it. Whether it's pushing past discomfort, refining your personal brand, or making your team stronger, action is what turns insight into impact. And to every listener who's been with us, whether this is your first episode or your 200th, thank you. This podcast exists because of your curiosity, your commitment to learning, and your drive to become better. I hope this episode has provided you with valuable insights. If it has, I ask you to share it with someone who would also benefit from it. If you've been enjoying and gaining knowledge from this podcast, then subscribe to our YouTube channel where you can find all the previous episodes of the podcast and additional learning resources. You can also subscribe to the podcast on Apple or Spotify and leave up to a 5-star review.